Mind Over Masculinity. I'm your host Avik, and today we are diving into a conversation that sits at the intersection of resilience, leadership, and breaking the barriers. Now, navigating a man's world, like it's a phrase which is loaded with meaning, right? For for some, it reflects the quiet endurance of being underestimated. For others, it's the challenge of rewriting the rules that were never designed with them in mind, right? So, for the man who is listening, it's an invitation to rethink what leadership, allyship, and true masculinity look like in a changing world. So, dear listeners, joining me, someone who has lived this journey with depth and courage. So, please welcome Stephanie Sylvestre. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it, and I'm super excited that we're coming all the way to India. I have not been, but I'm super excited to be able to go there.
Oh, lovely. That's great to hear from you for sure. I'd love to host whenever you're coming to India. Do let me know. And also, before we delve deep into the discussion, dear listeners, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Stephanie. So, dear listeners, Stephanie is a technologist, entrepreneur, and the human potential advocate. So, from corporate boardrooms to the kind of, you can say, frontier of AI innovation, she has consistently broken um, through the spaces where women and especially women of color are underrepresented, right? So, she doesn't just teach like how to thrive in the AI era, but she embodies like what it means to lead with both brilliance and humanity. So, I'll not take much of your time, listeners. Let's explore not just how to survive a man's world, but how to transform it. So, welcome to the show again. So, Stephanie, when you hear this phrase that a man's world, what comes up to you or for you personally?
Mm. Um, it's kind of like an interesting thing because I don't think of it as a man's world more than a woman's world, but I do understand that there are different techniques to navigating success. So when somebody says that, I think, okay, they're they're telling me that what I'm about to embark on is going to be maybe a little bit more challenging for me than if I was a male.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So, do you see that it's as a kind of obstacle for the workaround, or it's a system that needs reshaping altogether?
I think it's how you view it, right? So I'll answer that question, and it might sound contradictory. So first, I do think that the system needs to change. The way we are set up, the way people get ahead, there definitely is lots of room for improvement.
Hmm.
With that said, I think that sometimes people focus on what they don't have without focusing on what they do have. And when I say that, I mean there are advantages that I have as a woman, and I take that into consideration when I'm navigating a man's world. And so by taking that into consideration and seeing how I can turn it into a superpower, then I am able to maybe get ahead a little bit more. Now, I will definitely say there's been times where I know that I didn't get to do something, or maybe my progress was delayed a little bit because I was living in a place where the man did not believe that a woman would be able to do or would fit in, and so they would prefer not to have me included.
Okay. So that means you're saying it's all. Um, I mean, it varies person to person, their thought process and everything, and also the society,
Mm.
right?
And I won't say that it's just a mindset change. I think it's more than a mindset change, but one has to have a mindset change in order to navigate through it. Because if there's 8 billion people in the world and about 50% of them are male, that means there's 4 billion people that I have to change their perspective. That is a non-starter. But if I say there's 4 billion people in the world that have this viewpoint, then and how do I reconcile that viewpoint with what it is that I'm trying to accomplish? And how many of those 4 billion people do I need to then enroll into what I want to do? And that's where I kind of live. And then I could even argue that there's more than 4 billion people because there are women that also believe that it's a man's world and women should act accordingly.
Mhm. Okay. Understood. Understood. So, I mean, definitely it highlights whether we adapt to the existing structure or whether we disrupt it. So, the tension is something many of us wrestle with daily. So, uh, yeah. And so, in your own career, uh, what was the first time like you realized that you were being treated differently simply because you were a woman?
I think the first time was when we were all traveling and we as a team we went out to dinner
Mhm.
and and then everybody pretended they were going back to their room, so I went back to my room. And then the next morning somebody accidentally said, "Wow, what a wild night." And I was like, "Wild night?" We went back to our room at 9 o'clock. And that's when I realized that they had gone back to their pretended to go back to their room, but then they all went out without me.
Okay. So, like, I mean, looking back, what would you tell your younger self in that moment?
I mean, what I did was I said, "Why wasn't I invited? I would have gone and hang with you guys. You never even given me an opportunity for me to say no." Um, so I would say to my younger self, yeah, that's the right response. Assert yourself. I don't think I don't think that people sometimes do things like that to be intentionally mean. I think it was more about their discomfort than about me.
Okay.
So I would say as long as you say to the person, "Hey, that's not cool," and make them painfully aware that that's not a behavior that you're going to just um, become one with, then you have a point where you're able to navigate through.
Okay. So, like, I mean, because so many listeners can recall that exact kind of moment. I mean, I trust like there are listeners who may have faced this kind of same scenarios as well in their life, and hearing like how you reframed it, it definitely will give them that blueprint for courage in the real time. So, um, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And like you you have led in tech, an industry that's often kind of stereotyped as a male dominated. So, what practical tools or maybe the strategies helped you not just to fit in, but also to stand out?
Well, it, being in tech and there's a room full of people. Let's say there's a team of there's 15 and there's 2 women on the team. Because we don't blend in, people will remember us more easily. So
Mm.
you can follow up and you're standing out by the mere fact that you're one of a few people. The second piece of it is that because people have their biases and they intentionally don't expect you to be smart or to be able to do what you're doing,
Mm.
you bringing your A game instantly throws them off balance. By the time they've regained balance, if you're as good as you say you are, you should have already convinced the room that you're the right person for the project or for the position or the role or all three.
Yeah. Mhm. So, like, I mean, if someone listening feels kind of invisible at work right now, what's the one small step they can take today to change that dynamic? What will you guide them?
So if you're feeling invisible at work, and I don't want to come off as blaming the victim because that's not my intent. The first thing is do a mirror check, and a mirror check is just looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, "Am I contributing to this problem?" Because unless you can have that honest conversation with yourself, then it's really hard to have that conversation with somebody else, right? So a mirror check, am I contributed? And if you absolutely know that you have not contributed, then
Mhm.
the next step is to go and very kindly not confront people, because I like to believe that people are just living their lives, not really concerned about anybody but themselves, and and might not even be aware that they've done something inappropriate. I know lots of time people will call something to my attention. I'll be like, "Oh, wow, that wasn't my intent. I didn't even realize I did that." Um, and so have a conversation and explain to people, explain to the parties, how did it make you feel? And but don't just stop at how did it make you feel, because that's just dumping on them. Say, this is how it make me feel, and I would prefer if you don't do this anymore. And here's an alternative behavior if there's one. So going back to the example that I told you, we all went out to dinner. After dinner, everybody pretended they were going back to the room, and then they went out. And I would say, I think that if we're a part of a team,
Mm.
we should all we should not be keeping secrets from each other, and that's counts as a secret. The basic courtesy is to let me know that you've done something so that I have the opportunity to say no. And if my saying yes makes the outing uncomfortable, maybe you should not be going on that outing anyway.
Yeah,
Because we're on a professional business trip. We're not on a family vacation, a friend's vacation.
correct. Agree. Totally agree. Hmm. So, like, I like how you kept it kind of actionable because it reminds us that even in overwhelming environments, small and consistent moves create the visibility and the momentum. So that is the great part of it. And thank you so much for explaining this. And also, like one of your signature teachings is all about resilience and resourcefulness. So from there, like how do those skills specifically serve women navigating the male heavy industries? What do you have to say?
Um, so how do I navigate? Like, that's an interesting question. I never really stopped to think I'm the only woman here or I'm one of the few women here.
Okay.
I always came at it from there's there's a team of 9 people and we are trying to get something done and everybody has a role, and if somebody tries to undermine my role, I will have a conversation with them. And if we're all pushing together, I would expect that if they think that I am not doing a good job, that they would raise that to me. And so it starts with being self-confident, right? So again, I go back to, I'm not trying to sound like blaming the victim, but
Yeah.
there has to be some sense of self, some self agency, because people respond to the energy you give off. So when you think about, it's a male's world, there are some societal norms and things that we default to. So we now need to be intentional about not defaulting to those. And part of our job is to remind people that, hey, uh, just pointing a like, here's a blind spot. You just did something not cool in 2025, right? And as long as they say my bad and the behavior doesn't happen again, keep moving. If the behavior persists, then that's a different kind of conversation. But if you have self agency, you will be able to have that conversation with them. If you're exuding self confidence and those things you have to work on. Nobody gets up, wakes up and is confident. You have to practice that. You have to do mental
Mm.
jogging. You have to believe in yourself. You have to look about your life a different way. You know, sometimes it might be as simple as, today I got up and I folded my blanket. That's a win. Because every time you think that you won something, endorphins go off and your brain goes into a different space. So while it's a mental thing, it's also a physiological thing. I went to go catch the train, and the train pulled in at the same time I walked on the platform. Score. I didn't have to wait. I didn't have to watch the train miss. Score even more. I get on the train and some guy sees me and gets up and lets me sit in his seat. I just got 3 wins and I haven't gotten to the office yet. And so if you live in that space of winning, and then the second part is live in a space of gratitude. I am grateful that I have a bed and I have a blanket that I can
Mm.
fold. I am grateful that I have a job that I'm going to. I'm grateful that I could afford to be on the train. And I'm grateful that I'm a woman. And so there's some men that have been trained to say, if you see a woman standing, you have to get up and give them your seat.
Yeah.
And so if you live in that space and you're giving off that energy, then the universe starts responding to you differently. And that, I think, is how you start seeing differences. That's how you start winning.
Mm. True. I mean, yeah. I also on this, like, want to ask you, like, do you think that resilience ever backfire? Like when women are expected to tough it out instead of challenging unfair systems?
I don't that's a very interesting question. Does resilience um backfire? I don't think I think it's how you define resilience. Um Resilience doesn't backfire, tenacity does.
Mm.
So tenacity is, you just won't let it go. Like, I want you to give me this apple for 5 cents. And you're telling me that the price is 25 cents. And I'm like, no, it's 5 cents. And I'm just there hammering, 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 hammering. That backfires. Resilience is, I only have 5 cents.
Mm.
You said the apple is 25 cents. I say, "Hey, can you cut me a deal? Give me the apple for 5 cents." You say no. I say, "What about, give me half of the apple? Or let's cut the apple into 5 and you give me 1/5 of the apple. That's 5 cents and I'd be on my way." Right? That's resiliency. That doesn't backfire because you asked. And then you say no, and then I carry on um until the next person comes along and buys your apple.
Exactly. Wow. Amazing. Wow. And I mean that's a striking point, I say, because resilience is not about silently enduring, but it's all about knowing when to bend and when to push back. So true.
It's exactly, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll also ask you this thing. I mean, so what happens is, like, I was just reading in some of the Facebook groups, and also I have seen the same thing in one of the Reddit subreddit also. So it might sound contradictory, but actually not. Like, some people are arguing that constantly framing industries as kind of male dominated keeps reinforcing the division, which is, I mean, instead of unity. So, do you think that language helps progress, or, uh, I mean, unintentionally keeps us stuck?
It all depends on how you use it. This one for sure, it's
Mm,
I know it's how you use it.
mm,
If I say it is unfair that it's a man's world, then I'm reinforcing that it's a man's world.
mm.
And then I will do things that either fight against it, which will frustrate me and probably create resistance on the man's part. And then it becomes a man's world. Or I can go, it's a man's world right now,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that people can't change and grow and evolve. And so, what I'm going to do in my little part of the universe is whenever a man rolls up on me and he's doing something that I think is not appropriate, I will tell him about it. I will give him the benefit of the doubt that he just did not even think about it when that was not even something that he was in his frame of consciousness. He was just running on autopilot. And then I say, now I brought it to his consciousness. And it's upon him now to determine if he's gonna continue this or he's gonna change. Remember, there was a time when women didn't work or only poor women had to work. Now
Yeah.
everybody works. It's not it's not a big deal if a woman works. And obviously there's still some people, both men and women, that don't believe that women should work, but that is not a prevalent view in society anymore. That's moving to the fringes of society. And so how did that happen? That happened because women decided that they were going to go to work. They were not going to apologize for working and that they would rearrange their lives in a way that it made it okay for them to go to work, which meant getting nannies, negotiating with their husbands, having conversations with the males in their lives, having them agitating for them to change your perspective. That's how we got from women should not work outside the house to now it just seems natural that if a woman is working outside of the house, nobody even blinks an eye.
Hmm. That's very well said, I'd say. Yeah. So, wow. And uh, do you think that men are also under pressure to downplay this kind of soft skills in a culture that actually rewards dominance?
Well, it's actually kind of really interesting, right? Because I do believe that men get mixed signals. I think the women get mixed signals too, but men get it even worse. And women have support groups that they can go and help navigate, and men maybe not so much.
Yeah.
So, so from that perspective, being in a man's world as a male actually is worse than being in a man's world as a woman. And so, yes, and I think that that goes back to self agency and self efficacy.
Mm.
So if you know who you are as an individual, you know who you want to be as an individual, then you will show up as that way, right? And that's where That's where it then becomes more powerful. So if somebody says to you, I'll give you an example. Somebody asked me, why am I not married? And I said, I decided that I want to pursue a career. I love tech. I want to be able to sit there and work for hours on end without interruption, 7 days a week if I need to. That is not an acceptable thing to do if you have children. You cannot do that. You must tend to them. And and so once I say that, then what's their comeback to that? There's no comeback to that, because I'm telling you that I am in control of my life and I made this decision because of this. But if I say, well, you know, I kind of thought about it, but then I wasn't sure, and then I can't find any guy to marry me, and then like by time I started looking, I was too old, and the man, they only want young women, and then so now I'm like blaming everybody, right? And the world is such a horrible place because I have not enough self-efficacy and self agency to articulate how I want my life lived in what I perceive as a face of opposition.
True. True. Very true. Yep. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So, if you have to give one advice to the listeners today, what that would be?
That in moments of self-doubt, that is when you know you're doing something, the most powerful thing, because your brain is wired to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And so the moment your brain starts to try to undermine you by putting out self-doubt, means that you are doing something that's pushing yourself out of the comfort zone and pushing yourself to grow. And it's only through growth, being in discomfort, that you really achieve. So whenever my brain starts to create conversations around self-doubt, I know that I am about to achieve.
True. Amazing. Amazing. Lovely, Stephanie. I mean, thank you so much for bringing not just your expertise, but your honesty and uh, heart to this conversation, I'd say. And what we have uncovered today is that navigating a man's world is not about the competition, it's about the transformation. It's all
Exactly.
yeah, it's all about rewriting the rules of engagement so that the strength, resilience, and creativity belong to everyone, regardless of the gender. So, for everyone who is listening, if you have ever felt boxed in by someone else's definition of what you should be, then let this be your reminder. Like, you don't have to shrink to fit the room. You can grow, challenge, and even redesign the room itself. And Stephanie, if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the great medium to connect?
You can connect with me through LinkedIn, or you can email me, stephanie@avatarbuddy.ai.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, it's very easy. But still, I'll put it onto the show notes so that you can easily reach out to Stephanie. And if today's conversation has sparked something in you, then please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And also remember that true masculinity, true leadership, and is not about determination. So, it's all about the courage, connection, and creating the space for others to rise. So, with this hope, until next time, this is your host Avik reminding you strength isn't fitting the mold, but it's in daring to break it. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it, and I appreciate being on your podcast. I appreciate it.
Lovely. Lovely.
Mm.